I talk about the four horsemen of the mental apocalypse. And it's, these challenges that technology didn't necessarily cause, but it has amplified tremendously. So the first one's digital deluge. So, I'm talking to the person who's listening right now. How many people feel like there's too much information, too little time?
Yeah.
Like keeping up with everything is like taking a sip
totally
of water
me.
out of a fire hose.
Yeah, it's
right?
totally me.
Yeah. And there's health consequences. They call it information anxiety or information fatigue syndrome, higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness, right? Because we're just drowning in information. So the amount of information is doubling at dizzying speeds, but how we learn it and read it, understand it hasn't changed at all. So that growing gap creates that stress and anxiety. The second one is digital distraction. So you have digital deluge, which is overload. Digital distraction is how do you maintain your concentration in a world full of rings and pings and dings and app notifications, social media alerts, right? And so we're driven to distraction and we wonder why we can't focus when, we need to be present for a family member or, in a job interview, or with our team.
Can I ask you a question on that before we go on to the other ones? Because I've thought about this a lot in how I organize my week. I have decided that, like today, I did a podcast earlier. You're here. I'm very focused on human interaction. It allows my brain to calm. But if I'm also in the middle of writing my next book. Right. And if I had to go do a podcast, write my book, come back, do another podcast, then, answer some emails, I find that I get more distracted if what I have on my calendar that day is a bunch of different types of brain requirements.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way of, and it's great that you naturally came up, like organically with that for yourself, because we do that also where we bucket our days based on the activity. Because when you're going through and you're task switching throughout the day, if you're doing email, part of your brain is lit up, right? That cognitive web for that. What do you need to perform for? And then in order to go from that to something else, right, to talk, to do a podcast, do anything, you have to light up a different part of your brain.
Right.
So number one, when people are trying to multitask, right, really they lose three things. They lose time. The thing they think they're gaining, they're losing because it could take 5, 10, 15 minutes to regain your focus from going from one task to another. The second thing is, and I get to work with a lot of surgeons. Surgeons have been shown to make more errors during surgery when they're trying to multitask.
Interesting.
Right? It's similar to somebody driving and texting, right? Yeah. They're gonna more likely experience an accident. And if that wasn't a reason just to focus on one thing at a time, what I wanted to allude to, what you're alluding to, is the third reason, besides losing time and making mistakes, is energy, because it takes an immense amount of brain glucose to be able to switch from this to this to this. People wonder why nowadays they feel burnt out or they feel mentally fatigued, right? Because they are going through and using a lot of brain, because your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but it requires 20%, and it's an energy hog.
Yes.
And so a lot of people are just tired, and part of it is because they don't do what you're saying in terms of chunking their activities. Not everybody could do that, right? But to the degree we understand the principle, there's a promise. Yeah. Like even for me, even if I don't, I tend to film all mine in one day so I can stay in that mode. Yeah. And I stay off my phone because it tends to distract me, so at least I get through. And sometimes, in a day, I'll break it up morning, afternoon, evening. For example, one of the things I'll do if I'm home and I don't have certain things, the first part of the day, I'll create. And my brain is just, I don't even want input. Yeah. I don't know how you were with writing your books. For me, I was most creative in the morning.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Is there a reason for that? Because sometimes I'll get up at 3 and start writing.
Yeah, and some people have also found it, in an idiosyncratic way, because there's something calm where everyone else is sleeping and and you have this time. But for me, in the morning, I don't want input, so I don't go on my phone and everything. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I don't expect people to follow this directly, but just understand the principle. So for the morning, I create, and so I'm in flow, right? I'm creating. In the afternoon, I'm consuming. So that's when I'll do my research, or I'll read, or I'll listen to podcasts, right? So I go from my brain creating, pulling out, to later on consuming, pulling in. And then the third part of my day is the evening, when I just want to clear. And that's the third C. And that's where I'll I'll talk with my family and my wife about my day. That's a way of clearing the day. Okay. Or I will plan out the next day, so I don't have to ruminate over it at night, right? Yeah. Or I'll do some yoga nidra, right? Or some journaling. The whole idea is for me to clear my mind so I can get into that parasympathetic, rest and digest.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So you just answered something for me, because I just, with the expansion of everything in our business and all the projects we're working on, I found all of a sudden for the first time that I had like ADD, and that's not my normal way. And I realized it's too many opposing tasks in one day that my brain was getting pulled in all these different directions. And you mix that with menopause, which we'll talk about in a moment. It was like my focus became very, very difficult. And I just came up with this like 2 weeks ago. I was like, well, it seems like I should have all of the similar activities on one day so I can just fully immerse in that. The minute I said it, it just felt calm to my brain.
Yeah, and there's a reason when you chunk all your tasks, similar tasks together, like even if I was to add a fourth C to it, it'd be communication. And I'll usually do my communication when I go for a walk so I can get my steps in. Right. Because I think, walking is really good for my mind and my peace of mind also as well. But, as I'm walking, I'll do my calls or my Zooms, on my phone, and I'll chunk like 2 hours together and get my walk in and get my steps in, but then also communicate with all the people I need to. Yeah.
I do that too. When I go for a walk, I talk to everybody that I need to talk to, and then I come back and I'm like, okay, now I've communicated. So
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's really smart to do it that way. Okay, but finish the four. So you had distraction was the second one.
So you have digital deluge, digital distraction. So digital deluge is why we teach accelerated learning, speed reading. The digital distraction is why we focus on, there's a whole chapter on focus and concentration, which we could go into. The third area is something called digital dementia. And this is a term in healthcare where it's the high reliance in today's current society on our devices and using them as external memory storage. So like, just think about, I'm in my 50s. I'm thinking about like, how many phone numbers did we memorize when we were younger? Like, I remembered all of them. Yes, right? Because we'd had no choice.
I still remember my childhood.
Yeah, isn't that interesting, your long-term memory?
Yeah.
But how many phone numbers do you recall today, like now?
No.
Yeah, most people.
So on that one, that's so fascinating is that I can tell you my husband's cell because it's been the same forever. I can tell you my daughter's cell because we weren't so heavily reliant on our phones when she got her phone. I can't tell you my son's cell number. I can't even begin to tell you the number because by the time he got a cell phone, I already had a phone that could just memorize it and send it.
Well, that's what they're saying. Digital dementia is the high reliance on, the memory. So your brain is like, it's an organ obviously, but it acts more like a muscle. Yeah. And it's use it or lose it.
Right.
And not that I want to memorize 500 numbers, right? 500 phone numbers, but it should be concerning we've lost the ability to remember one number. Right. Or a PIN number or a passcode or a seed phrase or a conversation we just had or something we were supposed to do or something we were supposed to buy or someone's name that we just heard. Right. Right. And I believe there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's more a trained memory and an untrained memory, meaning that I don't want to be able to have to memorize all these things, but I want to keep the ability. But it's the equivalent of, if your office is or your apartment's on the 4th floor, yes, you could take an elevator or you could take the stairs, right? And the elevator is much more convenient, just like your phone is very convenient, but you don't want it to be crippling at the same time where we're not getting the physical exercise or the mental exercise. For sure. If you have to go to the bank and it's 10 blocks away, we could hop in the car or jump into a lift, or we could walk it. Yeah. Right. And then, and then we get our steps in. It's another way. Even when I'm going to the store, sometimes I'll park, far away and I could get to, get extra steps in. Yeah. But it's not as convenient, but I also want a level of physical and mental fitness also as well. Yeah. So that's the digital dementia. And that's why memory is such a big focus. And I believe two of the most costly words, Mindy, are like, I forgot. Right. And I think about the consequence of us saying, like, I forgot to do it. I forgot to bring it. I forgot that meeting. I forgot what I just read. I forgot that person's name. And on the other side, when you can remember something, life gets so much easier. When you can remember facts and figures, foreign languages, give a talk without notes or a teleprompter, remember client information and product information, names and faces. I feel like in today's expert economy, because nobody who's listening to this, it's not like it was hundreds of years ago where it was our brute strength, going out in fields and everything. Today's your brain strength. Right? Today you're not compensated so much for your muscle power. Today it's your mind power. Yeah. And the faster you could learn, the faster you could earn. Because knowledge today is not only power, it's profit. There's this gap of, yes, there's a gap between those who have and those who don't have, but there's also a gap between those who know stuff and those who don't know stuff.
So true.
right? And the people I'm preaching to the choir for people listening because they're dedicated to learning and education.
For sure.
But yeah, I just feel like nowadays we have to really realize that we're the pilot of our brains. We're not the passenger.
Yeah.
So that's number 3. And then the fourth one I made to fit the D's, because there's digital deluge, distraction, dementia, is something called digital deduction. You know, I saw this study where children, this is the first time this generation where they scored worse than the previous generation on rational ability, logic, and so on, critical thinking. And they tested it to technology, because technology is doing all the thinking for us.
Oh my
You think
gosh.
about algorithms, or you think about even just getting from here to there using GPS, right? That's visual. That's a form of visual spatial intelligence.
Yeah.
But you know how many times, and there was a study done, you know, with London taxi drivers that we do a lot of research and talk about it, and they promote a lot of the research. But in London, they have these taxi drivers that just have an incredible, they have to memorize all the streets, right? And literally their brain reflects that, meaning, you know, you've heard the term, you know, neurons that fire together, they wire
Right.
together, but they actually have part of their brains that's more dense. And it's because that, you know, through learning and new learnings, it actually led to that. And same thing with, you know, but if you don't know how to get from here to there, or you've done it a few times, but if you don't have your app open, your maps or something, people don't know what to do. And so we're not exercising, you know, our minds the same.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
crazy.
so again, convenience, and I'm all for technology. You know, technology is not necessarily good or bad. Like fire is a form of technology. It can cook your food, or it could burn down your home, right? It's just how it's applied.